the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm good.
You know, in our Police, Fire, Military, and Families Facebook group, if you haven't requested access, go ahead and do that now. There's a lot of times where somebody who might be new to the group, they will very delicately create a post, and it might be something that they need to get off their chest. And the first sentence is usually something along the lines of like, I hope nobody judges me for what I'm about to say. And then they go on to talk about something like heinous, and then it is usually followed up by something hysterical. And a lot of the times in the first responder culture, I think that dark humor is something that most people will use as a coping mechanism. But I'm wondering, for a lot of people, is this coping or is this actually hiding pain or trauma?
Yeah, I think we do this a lot to ourselves, is trying to turn a dark situation, trying to turn a horrible situation into something humorous, to be able to get our minds to be able to process it in one way or another. And I think we're putting a Band-Aid on something that is a lot more severe, requiring better treatment than just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and for those that are like in the environment, I don't think it's any secret that police, fire, EMS, military professionals, they use humor as a way to be able to process the tragedy. There's jokes, there's sarcasm, we have those morbid one-liners. It can bond everybody together through that time of chaos. But what it also does is it becomes this emotional armor that actually hides the deeper pain.
Yeah, I think we start, and you start feeling this because you see that dynamic. You're in that group think in this instance of, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do when I'm, bearing witness to an event like this, to a tragedy, is, okay, we got to joke about it. You try finding the light in the darkness.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to break down why dark humor actually develops, how it can help, how it can harm, and what happens when that sense of laughter really becomes the only way for you to be able to survive your job, because there are some people that is literally their only go-to trauma response.
There's a perfect example of this. I was talking with a partner recently, and he took over kind of my position that I was doing for a long time, and it was really funny how he had this realization for himself. He had watched a video that someone sent to him, and he goes, normal, when I watched this video, he's all, normally I would have thought it was hilarious. And then he watched it and he's like, this isn't funny. Like, why did they send this to me? And he had that realization for us. And he's like, oh, I'm returning back to normal. And he's like, I would have laughed at this 6 months ago, but I didn't even find it funny anymore.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
And with him having that realization, he's like, wow, I was kind of going down that dark rabbit hole and thinking, that stuff that wasn't funny was very funny.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example. The psychological concept here is actually emotional displacement and humor as a defense mechanism. So let's break that down a little bit. And I think that displacement is when your emotions feel unsafe to express, like you're feeling grief or fear or anger, and then it's redirected into safer outlets. So in this case, we're talking about humor.
Yeah, I think we start trying, I think it's a human nature thing too, is, especially in a tense situation, in a very rough situation, whether it's, you're just trying to calm yourself down, calm your nerves down. You make a joke trying to break that tension compared to trying to address it head on.
Yeah, diving into things a little bit scholastically, humor has actually been identified as one of the mature defense mechanisms because it allows people to be able to express their pain indirectly without falling apart.
Yeah, being able to say, hey, laughing at something, making a scenario, because you're able to do it coming from a happy, laughing mindset compared to a deep, dark, trauma triggered mindset.
Yeah, and I think that when humor replaces healing, it becomes this wall that sort of separates you from your emotions and from others who need the real you, especially when everybody is going through the same thing.
And I had a conversation with an officer recently, and he had just, and I had no clue on this. I was talking to him just in a completely irrelevant situation. And he came to me not in the joking mindset, but what he said to me, it really took me aback because I wasn't ready for it. And he wasn't joking. He was just straightforward and said something to me. And I don't want to say it just because of to protect him in this way, but it struck me. But then him and I had a really deep, really good conversation, and I knew it made an impact to him to help him bear the weight of what he had just experienced.
Just to give context, because I have no idea, what you just said makes no sense. So like he said something in terms of dark humor?
He said something to where it wasn't even humorous. It was more so of, we started kind of talking, joking, our normal kind of dialogue. And so he had that dark humor mindset to it. And then he says, yeah, we had this last night, and he was just getting off work. It was a couple hours behind he normally was supposed to be getting off. And what he said was not humorous whatsoever, but I could tell like it made a big impact of, this is how he was looking at it. And I knew we needed to take time to break that down for him.
Yeah. So without knowing anything about the context of what you're talking about, I think that whatever he said was like so shocking and maybe out of sorts that you, based on your experience, were able to identify like, hey, this is a sign, and this is something I might need to hold space for. Yeah,
and that's where it stemmed from. It stemmed from that joking, having that dark humor leading up to it, not in reference to that situation. And this is where I think a dark humor can come into play and can be beneficial in some mindsets, is being able to joke around over certain things, but then seeing that face change, that those expressions change, and the verbiage change to where as you're talking, you go, okay, this is a dark humor, this is a joking side, and this is a serious side.
Yeah, and then also the person receiving it being able to sit there and actually pay attention, to be able to see the person completely. And, there are ways that dark humor helps first responders, I think. And the first is that it really builds this instant camaraderie, because when you have shared humor, it fosters belonging, it helps to relieve some tension, especially after those really hard calls.
Yeah, you're able to kind of joke around, and I've seen this a lot, and where you start having this dark humor, you start joking with one another. It's like, oh yeah, I was on this dead body the other day, and I was starving, so I ate lunch, while I was just waiting for the coroner's office to show up, and it's a kind of that's a broad kind of joke that goes across law enforcement, but it's something that, as you're sitting there, as you're talking, it starts opening the doors to other conversations that you can have too.
A lot of people might not realize that it's like a pressure release valve too, because it's a really fast way to be able to diffuse that heaviness right before that heaviness starts to take over.
And that's a perfect example of it, because there's good deflection techniques that you see, and I shouldn't say good deflection techniques, but you'll see is like when you're starting to have, okay, I noticed something is not right here, and you ask a serious question in reference to whatever that may be, you see them completely deflect and take that pivot of, oh yeah, we're not talking about this anymore.
Yeah, and when you're going through it, when you have death and you have tragedy, something else that's important to know is that this creates this psychological distance, because joking about the chaos helps us to be able to manage that unmanageable feeling.
Yeah, being able to, like I said, was, bring lightness, bring a light kind of aura to what you just experienced, is going to make it to where, especially if you're talking about it, you're able to approach it from kind of a different mindset compared to if you go, yeah, that was pretty screwed up.
Something really unfortunate is when I see this happening on body cams, and the officer made the mistake of that dark humor being expressed during a family incident, and the family shouldn't have heard what you said. And then the media takes that and runs with it, not knowing any of this psychologically.
Yeah, and it's when you take tidbits out of a totality of a circumstance, it can be a appearance of negative, appearance of bad, when in all reality, who's actually looking at that officer and his own mental well-being with that incident?
There are ways, though, that I think that dark humor actually just turns into a mask and a false identity for you. And one of those is when everything becomes a joke and nothing ever gets processed, or what's funny in the situation can land really painfully at home. There's also times when you stop feeling the release and then you only feel this emptiness that follows, or when humor starts to become your armor and then that armor starts to block out compassion. So I think it's really important for us to be able to find ways that we can actually check the intent behind the joke. Like, is this to connect or am I trying to deflect something? And having off-duty humor boundaries, I think, is so important for the same reasons we discussed, having them during family tragedies, for example. And also make sure that after the joke that you're making space for yourself for what's underneath it. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're broadcasting to the world or to anybody else, but make sure that you're doing that for yourself. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.
Life doesn't pause when you're sick. Vaccines against respiratory illnesses can help protect you and give you more playtime with your best friend. Depending on age and health status, vaccinations for flu, COVID-19, RSV, or pneumococcal infection may be recommended. Vaccines can help keep you from having a rough time. Learn more at cveep.org/vaccines-protect. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and CVEEP, fighting infectious respiratory disease.